excited about talking about HR tonight, right? We'll try to make this upbeat and lively. I mean, it is human resources. I think hopefully you'll have one or two takeaways by the end of tonight. My name's Mike. I've been with Paychex for about 5 years, but I've been in the industry for about 10. I manage a team of 15 people, so I know what it's like to hire, fire, have crucial conversations with people. I've fought unemployment claims, so I can empathize with you a little bit today. So I'm really excited about learning a little bit more about you and hopefully sharing with you some top 10 things to be aware of from an HR perspective as you run your business. Kim, do you mind just sharing a few words about yourself and then we'll get started? All right.
My name is Kim Petkovich. I've been with Paychex since 2002, and I've represented this program to the small business marketplace. I do with companies from 1 employee up to almost 1,000 employees, and all the companies have one thing in common. It's managing employees from pre-employment separation and everything that happens from in between. So we have a comprehensive program that can integrate with payroll or not integrate with payroll, and what Mike and I are going to talk to you guys about today is really some issues that come up with employees today, and how we can go about helping companies minimize their liabilities and exposure when it comes to hiring and firing. So I'll finish hanging out.
Well, actually, before we jump into our presentation, I want to learn a little more about you, and maybe if you could just do a quick introduction of your name, what kind of company you own or run or work for, how many employees you have, and maybe one thing you were hoping to get at tonight so we can make sure we cover that aspect. So why don't we start with you?
Okay. I'm Stephanie Beloga. I own the Huntington Learning Center. I have approximately 20 part-time employees.
Okay.
And 1, maybe 2 full-time.
Okay.
And oh gosh, I have a lot of questions that I'm sure will come up along the way. I have wonderful teachers because we are an accredited school. But I wasn't trained in HR. It's not my background, so I'm very cautious in my interview process, and then even as the owner of the center, like my relationship with people, and I think those boundaries need to be defined.
Yes.
And so there's questions. I mean, they're all good people. It's not like I'm worried, but you know what I'm saying. I just don't know.
We're certainly going to cover that, so you'll have plenty of takeaways from that topic alone. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Milena Krakowska. I sell online, do online retail, and I basically do it through Amazon. And I'm about to expand out of my house into a larger space. And I have 0 employees.
Okay.
I know nothing about having employees, but I might have to hire someone soon. So
wonderful. Well, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Nito Frady, and I'm working with my brother in a business for consulting.
Oh, great.
And it's a startup, so just trying to learn the ramifications of hiring people.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you.
Hi, how are you? I'm new to Connecticut, so I don't know the laws around hiring. I have had my own business before.
Okay.
So now I'd like to pursue opening an art gallery. I'm an artist.
Oh, awesome. Exciting. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Bruce. I run the largest shelter in the state of Connecticut, so not-for-profit. And I have a staff of a little over 20, and I have about, we're between about 150 homeless people that are in my shelter at any given night. And so we've got lots of all types of ethical issues and challenges around dealing with the homeless population.
Absolutely. Anything you were hoping to get out of tonight's seminar?
Well, we're coming with a new administration, so I'm looking to get rid of some people.
Okay. So, all right. All right.
I like to clean slate before they get here, so
separation.
Just make their job easier as my meetings coming in.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Charlie, I'm a school mentor.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Hi.
Hi, I'm Marge Dixon. I'm here because I'm interested in possibly starting a business.
Wonderful. How exciting. Well, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Jonna Jeffco. I own and operate Infinity Music Therapy Services. I have 8 board certified music therapists on my staff. I have part-time staff. I've done salaried, hourly. I have subcontractors.
Oh, wow.
We have 3 divisions of the company, so we provide direct services in homes, schools, and facilities in the state of Connecticut. I do national business consulting for people in my field throughout the entire country, and then I also do labor and delivery services. So I'm at the point where the age gap has gotten bigger and bigger between me and my staff as they're coming out of undergrad and are newly board certified. And they are kind of confused on what it means to actually be an adult. And I'm hoping to be able to navigate that a little easier.
Yep, we'll touch on that.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for coming, absolutely. Did I miss anyone? Oh, yeah, like, come on.
Lori Lubekin,
Yeah.
I'm with the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce and the Redstone Pub.
Yeah.
And with the Redstone Pub, we are hiring. We hire servers and bartenders.
Sure.
And I am also interested in millennials.
Okay.
Because they're a very different generation. And it's been interesting to try and train them on work ethic and what it means to be professional, and you know, the whole coming to an interview in nice professional clothes and not cut off jeans.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, as part of the millennial generation, you can be successful and you can tap into your skill sets. It's all about how to motivate them and figure out how to manage those folks. So we'll touch on that as well. So. Well, great stuff for us to talk about tonight. I can see a common thread is that we're all small business owners, right? And so when I look at human resources for a company and businesses of your size that's in the room, I break it into 3 major components. Okay, number 1 is compliance. You want to make sure you're doing what's expected of you in regards to Department of Labor, OSHA, Homeland Security, all these scary terms. These state agencies are essentially inspecting what they expect and they're finding for non-compliance. Studies have shown that for every $1 they're spending on auditors, they're getting $16 back. And so it's pretty aggressive. So we'll talk about some things that you probably should be doing as a business owner and be aware of, right? Because no business owner ever wants to lose money due to an audit or a fine. It's just throwing your hard-earned dollars right out the window. Okay. The second component is documentation. Okay. Anyone familiar with the term "the burden of proof falls on employers"? Yeah. Right. So. You might have heard of it, you might have experienced it firsthand, but what that essentially means is if you have an employee that ever wants to retaliate against the company, they want to accuse you of discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, whatever, or they get injured under your watch, you have to provide to the court system that you've done everything in your power to prevent and protect. So a common thread throughout today's meeting today is you're going to see that things have to be in writing, and they have to be signed off by the employee prior to happening. Alright, so the burden of proof falls on ownership. And we'll go over, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that was amended in 1991, and 4 big things happened, which was a big game changer for business owners. So we'll touch on that. And then the third part of HR, in kind of addressing the millennials and retention, is performance management and retention tools, right? Most of our employees are happy, productive members of society, right? They're not all the bad, scary employees that are going to take us to court. Right? They're not the scary millennials. Most of our employees are really good people, and we want to keep them. Turnover for any company is unhealthy. Right? Once we have them here, we want to figure out what it is that's going to motivate them and keep them happy. So different things motivate different people, and a lot of it has to do with performance management and stretching our people so we get the most out of them. All right? So we'll talk about all these things kind of sprinkled throughout our top 10 HR issues. So with that said, we're going to go on to the next slide. So if you don't mind, let's see if I can... Okay, here we go. So start over. All right, so we're going to cover some of these things. So job descriptions, Form I-9s, employee classifications, payment of overtime hours, handbook policies, harassment, FMLA, which really doesn't apply to anyone in this room, so we're going to speed through that. Healthcare reform doesn't apply to anyone in this room, so we're going to speed through that. Employee at will does, and anti-discrimination does. So we're going to go through this, and hopefully, I don't think we're going to be here for 2 hours. So we'll get through this, and we'll make it fun, interactive. Raise your hand if you have questions, and I'm happy to answer it, okay? All right. Job descriptions. Everyone has them, right?
Yeah.
All right. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay, so why do we have job descriptions? Why do you guys put them in place?
Because I don't want an argument later on hearing that's not part of my job.
Right. I was never told that, right?
Yeah.
Right? What else? Why else do we have job descriptions?
know what's expected of them.
Right, exactly, yeah. All good answers. Anything else?
Use it for performance evaluation.
Reset expectations, absolutely, if you need to do that. Yeah, you know, all the things you guys talked about. Job descriptions are a vital tool, all right? They should be updated, you know, because every year you want to review your job descriptions. You want to make sure they're ADA compliant. Most of us fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we want to make sure that we're not being discriminatory for our employees. From a recruiting standpoint, you know, if there's physical demands to any job or stressful situations for any position, we need to make that clearly spelled out to that applicant before they hire. Because what happens if, you know, if I'm running a piece of machinery and there's some heavy lifting involved or whatever, we want to make sure that, you know, if I say I can't lift 50 or more pounds, that I don't then have to provide a reasonable accommodation for that employee, right? Or that employee gets injured outside of work, right, and they come to you and they say, look, I can't be a waiter for the next 6 months because, you know, my arm's in a cast. Do you have an office job for me? Well, no, I hired you as a waiter. But then that employee now is able to collect unemployment, which affects your unemployment rate, so it's a snowball effect. So job descriptions are vital. You want to make sure you have them. They set clear expectations. It also helps with the classification of employees. All right, when I talk about classifications, we're going to get to it, but exempt versus non-exempt, which is, you know, salaried versus hourly. It's not what you call an employee. It's what are their daily functions of the job, and the essential functions of the job is what they call it, and all that should be outlined in a job description. I would highly, highly, highly recommend employees sign off on job descriptions. Okay? Great that you have them, make sure they sign off on them. If you do a lot of recruiting, like if you're looking to hire a position and you need to hire a few people, you want to post a job description that's well defined. It saves you a lot of time. That way the people that are applying for the job are aware of what's expected of them, so hopefully you're not getting CNAs applying for a bartender position, right? So really, really important. I love that someone said for resetting of expectations or performance reviews. There's a lot of times we need to reset and remind our folks about what their jobs are, okay? What I hear out there is the reasons why people don't put job descriptions in place is because they don't want to lock someone into a role, right? Small businesses, it's all hands on deck. Everyone pitches in. We want to make sure that, that they say, well, I want, you know, if I say this isn't their job, then they tell me that you know, that I can't do this extra thing that I assigned you. Well, there's a way around it, right? In a job description, you want to be able to put any other duties or tasks assigned by management. Okay, that's going to protect you. All right. Questions on job descriptions? Clear? Yep.
Well, if they don't sign the job description, is it okay to sign like a blanket statement that says they have reviewed the personnel manual and agree with, I can't remember what ours says. Is it okay to sign that blanket statement?
Yeah, I mean, if you've like local operating procedures, which is kind of like a job function, yes, that's okay. As long as something's in writing that defines that you spelled out what their job was and they were aware of it, they acknowledge it. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, ideally, you want a job description and have a signature on it and put it in the personnel file. Okay. Right, review it, you know, this is why we hired you, this is what your jobs are expected of you. Any other, great question. Any other questions on job descriptions? They require work, right? You want to update them. It is an area where Paychex does customize our job descriptions for our clients, so if it's something you need help with, we can certainly address that with you. You know, you want to have current job descriptions. Jobs do change. You want to be specific in the process that you review your job descriptions. Identify the essential functions of each role. Yep, okay. Good. I think that's good. Talked about. All right, Form I-9s. Who's familiar with Form I-9? Good. You guys are great. So does everyone have an I-9 for all their employees? Okay, great. So the Form I-9, just as a reminder, it is one of those things you just got to make sure you have. Right? It's day one, an employee needs to fill it out. The employer needs to fill out their section within 3 days. Does everyone know how long you're supposed to keep an I-9 on file for?
Ever.
Okay.
7 years now.
7 years, okay. Any other guesses?
You mean once they're no longer in your employment?
Yeah, I mean, a broad question. So as long as they're with you, you should have an I-9 on file for them, right? But the rule is if they've been with you for less than a year, you keep it for 3 years after they leave. If they've been with you more than 3 years and they've left, you keep it for 1 year. The reason why it's important to kind of have a purging process for some of these employee records is that if you're going to be audited by the Department of Labor, the first thing they're asking for are the I-9s. And if you weren't sure when you first had the I-9 filled out that it was, filled out correctly, you could be, responsible for making sure that it was filled out, and they'll fine you for it. So have a purging process.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yep.
You said if they're less than a year?
Less than a year, 3 years after they leave. And they've been with you longer than 3 years, you keep it for 1 year.
1 year after?
Yeah, 1 year after they leave, yeah.
In terms of going through the interview process, collecting personal information, and you actually don't hire someone, what is the requirement of keeping their information? Anything?
1 year. 1 year. So resumes, applications, 1 year is best practice. There's no law that says it, but for discrimination reasons, if someone feels like they didn't get a job because, something they said during the interview, those could be summoned court documents, and it's always good to have them on file. And I-9, just for everyone in the room to know what it is an employment verification form that Homeland Security does require every single employee to fill out. Owners have to fill them out as well, so if you're an owner, you do have to have an I-9 for yourself. They just updated the I-9 recently, in the last couple of months. So whenever you have a new employee, make sure you're going on the Department of Labor website and getting the latest version of the I-9. Best practice, I-9 should be put in one folder. All right? The reason being, hear me out, in the event of an audit by the Department of Labor, they're going to request the I-9s. If you give them access to all the employee files, they're going to go through the files and they're going to figure out what else is out of compliance, and they're going to tack on the fines. If you give them just what they're looking for, then they're isolated to that one folder. Any other questions about I-9s? Okay. Easy to find them. Google Form I-9 and make sure it's from a government website. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. We can move on. Go on. Yeah, we talked about purging policy. Okay, employee classification. Everyone know the difference between exempt versus non-exempt? Okay. So just to kind of recap with everyone, exempt is salaried. Can you be exempt but also eligible for overtime? You can, right? So if you don't work the required amount of hours, you still get the same pay, right? But if you work over the hours, you can still get the same pay. So let's talk about salaried exempt. Okay, there's certain criteria that needs to happen in order for you to be considered salaried exempt. That's paying someone the same rate every single week, no matter how many hours they work. Okay. 3 things typically need to happen, and there's exceptions to the rules because it's the United States government. 1, they have to manage 2 or more employees. Okay?
Does that include part-time employees?
So part-time could be salaried, right?
No. Does that mean
No,
managing part-time employees?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it does include that. Yep. 2 or more employees. 80% of their job is not routine in nature. So what the heck does that mean? Well, that's why job descriptions are really imperative to define what their job functions are. And they have to make at least $455 per week, according to the government right now. Okay. There are exceptions to the rule. A couple exceptions are there's a sales exception. So if I'm a commission-based sales employee, then I can still be salaried and not have to follow all 3 buckets. I'm a professional. I went to school for accounting. I'm the company's CPA or the company's controller. Okay, so those are primarily the only 2 exceptions. Hourly. The big thing with hourly, which is non-exempt, means you guys just have to track the hours, right? Somehow you have to make sure that the employee is aware of the hours worked and they sign off on it. You want to track those hours because anything 40 hours or more, they get time and a half. Okay. And what else with that? I think that's the big thing. That's non-exempt. Yeah.
But if you want to hire interns on a stipend?
Interns are different, right? So they don't have to follow all the bylaws, but you don't even have to pay an intern. So you have some discretion there as long as you can justify that there is some educational component to it, and that's something you work out with the university.
Can you name the three things again?
Yep. 80% of their job is not routine in nature, manage 2 or more employees, and they have to make $455 per week. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Is this federal or does it vary by state?
It's federal right now. Yeah. So, interesting question. So sometimes we have state laws and sometimes we get federal laws. Typically state will dictate, but the way the laws are written is whatever is more favorable to the employee. So sometimes federal is more favorable to the state. Okay. Anything else on, trick question. So I work 60 hours, so I get paid bi-weekly, okay? I work 60 hours week 1, and I work 40 hours week 2. Where do I get overtime?
The week in which you work the 60 hours.
Okay, good. Yep. What if I worked, well, the point I'm trying to make, I can't think of it right now, the point I'm trying to make is it's based on the week, not the bi-weekly pay scale.
So I think what you're trying to make is if you work 30 hours one week, but you work 60 hours the other week, even though it adds up more than 80 hours.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So just make sure you guys, when you do calculate your hours, it's on a week, even though you get paid bi-weekly. Thank you for doing that. Questions on hourly versus salary, exempt versus non-exempt? Yep.
Pay per visit. Because that's a whole other thing that's not even in there. That's a pain in the rear end in my field.
Yeah, we're going to have a side conversation on that. Yeah, because this is a lot of, it's state specific, and it's all about how you set expectations from the hiring process and what their roles are. Yeah. Okay, per diem versus part-time versus, contract. Yeah, we'll have a side conversation about it. Okay. Yeah, we went through all that. A lot of stuff we're kind of going through, guys. Yep. Go on. Okay, handbook. This is a really important topic, so I kind of want to spend some time here. So, employee handbooks. Everyone have one? Is there anyone who does not have an employee handbook? Okay, so no employees, right? So, let's talk about that. Why did we put an employee handbook in place?
I have in there everything from job description to disciplinary procedures, expectations.
Sure.
Just to cover my rear end.
Cover your butt, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, anytime we have a disagreement or anything like that, we go back to the handbook. It's in the handbook.
Mm-hmm.
So any of my paper trail for disciplinary action or termination, I can reflect back on the actual disciplinary procedures that we've done with the paper trail with that and go all the way back to the original document.
Okay. Wonderful. Awesome. What else? Why else? Same reasons? Clarity? Consistency? Okay. So, I think we can all agree that most of our employees are really good people and they don't need an employee handbook to do the right thing, right? I break employees into 3 major categories, and hopefully you can agree with me. So, category 1 is A employees, right? A employees are pennies from the heavens. We love them. They do their job 110% of the time, and they are loyal. They will never leave you, not for more money, not for a better working condition. They believe in your vision, and they are with you for life, so we want to hold on to those, okay? We don't worry about them retaliating against the company, okay? The bulk of your employees are what I call B employees, right? These are the ones, that your worker bees. They come into the office, they do their job, and they go home. They're not toxic. They show up to work on time, and our job as business owners is to retain because they make up the biggest group of our staff, right? We sometimes confuse them with A's because they appear to be loyal, but you're just doing a really good job at motivating them, right? But as soon as they have a bad manager or you hire someone new to the company and they create a toxic environment, they are exit stage left and they are out of there. Or if there's a competitor down the road that's offering them, double the money or more money, again, they're going to follow the money. But the reason why we put policies and procedures in place is for what I call the C employees, the mishires, the ones that say, you know what, it's not your fault you're getting fired, you probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place, right? Somewhere, somehow, they got past your wonderful interview skills, and they told you the story about themselves, and they got themselves inside your business, right? But employee at will, right? Yes, I have the right to terminate you, right? And we're going to talk a lot of these things when you criss and cross, but we got to look at a C employee, and we got to say, all right, do I work with you? Do I coach you? Do I develop you and get you to a B category? Or do I really say, you know, wrong fit, now I'm going to manage you out of my company so you don't cost me any more money than you already have, right? The only way to do that is to have an employee handbook. You will lose every single time an unemployment claim. And everyone knows about unemployment and how that affects the bottom line, correct? Okay. Worst case scenario, they're going to accuse you of wrongful termination, right, or harassment. Okay. So employee handbooks are really important. Now, because the reason why they're so important is because of what happened back in 1991. I alluded to it earlier. So does anyone know what happened in 91? So 4 things happened to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay. Number 1 is pretty familiar. The burden of proof shifted from the employee to the employer. So that's pretty simple to think of. You know, basically, the business owner has to prove that they didn't do what the employee is accusing them of doing. Second thing happened is both punitive and compensatory damages. So just let me give you an example. I sometimes wear glasses. My boss calls me 4 eyes. I take it personally, right? I take it so personally that I can't come to work for 6 months. Right? This is the story that lawyers paint. So I'm in bed, can't work for 6 months. What does that mean to the business owner? That's 6 months of no work, so that's back pay, plus pain and suffering. All right, so it's a big ticket. Third thing that happened is that there's a vicarious liability. So any of those that have managers that work for us, right, they represent you. So if they misspeak or an employee feels like they were a target of wrongful doing, hostile work environment, discrimination, whatever, that falls on the ownership's shoulders. So you want to make sure that your managers are properly informed on how to diffuse or handle situations. Okay. And then the fourth thing that happened was what? Vicarious liability.
Trial return.
Right. Judge to jury. So what that means is, it went from one person saying, all right, Mr. Business Owner, here's your fate based on the facts, to a panel of 12 people. To, and all of a sudden now 12 people who typically are not business owners, right? There's more employees out there than business owners. They will say, all right, based on the facts, here's what your fate is, and usually they've had bad management. So you want to be careful about those things. So some of the pitfalls with employee handbooks. You want to make sure they're updated regularly, all right? You got state and federal labor laws that you want to make sure that they change. So lovely Connecticut, every 6 months to a year they change some of their state policies. They always have a new protected class that comes out, so you do want to make sure that you're aware of that. You do want to make sure that they are legally reviewed by a labor attorney, otherwise you have your plumber do it. Really, really important that this document will hold up in a court of law. Okay? Some of the things that we do see is that business owners will sometimes borrow, steal employee handbooks from other companies. There's a big risk there. A, we don't know if the company that you're stealing from actually did the right job and did it the legal way. B, policies are designed based on employee size. So you might be complying with things that you don't even have to worry about. Okay, so you want to make sure that when you put anything in writing, it matches your leadership style and it matches the laws that you have to comply with. As small as you are, the top 3 things is you can't discriminate, you can't harass, and we're going to talk about those things, and you got to pay your people fairly and on time. So all that information needs to be communicated to your people in writing. And I always say common sense isn't so common, so policies like please don't steal from us, please show up to work on time, please adhere to the dress code policy, all needs to be spoon-fed to your people and signed off. Because believe it or not, if you caught someone stealing from you and you were to terminate them and you couldn't prove it, they're going to collect unemployment. Okay, so you want to make sure you put that stuff in writing. Questions on that?
Are we having them re-sign off every 6
Yes.
months if there's a change?
Yep.
Okay.
So, great question. The way the law is written is, did the business do everything in their power to prevent and protect? So having a policy one time, signed off one time, is not doing everything in your power to prevent and protect. Massachusetts, it's required. In Connecticut, it's highly recommended that you have a harassment policy signed off and a training with that every single year. And harassment is not just sexual in nature, it's hostile work environment, it's bullying, all that stuff kind of goes into that whole entire conversation. Okay. Questions on that? Okay. All right. Yeah, legal, just make sure it goes through legal. It's so huge. Okay, workplace harassment. Can't do it. Okay, moving on. So, I mean, here's the reasons why you guys can't harass. I mean, it's anyone, right? And not that we mean to do it, right? But sometimes people take things the wrong way, which is really important to make sure we have policies and procedures that communicate that we don't tolerate this type of behavior. All right. Workplace, I mean, the top reasons why small businesses will go into litigation, one of them is due to workplace harassment. Okay. I'll give you a quick story. We had a 30-man electrical contract. And you have a story too?
I got one.
Okay, she's got a lot of stories too. But I've got one that is kind of not one that you would expect, right? So I had a 30-man electrical contracting company, and the owner had a foreman that managed 3 or 4 guys. And one of the guys on this foreman's team happened to be 18 years old, and he was also a protected class. He was Spanish, okay? And like any 18-year-old, those millennials, he was, mouthing off, goofing off, not listening to directions. And this foreman happened to be a football coach as well. So he managed this 18-year-old kid the way he knew how to. So he told this 18-year-old kid to drop down and give him 15 push-ups. So this 18-year-old kid's like, I am not dropping down doing 15 push-ups. No, you're going to drop down and give me 15 push-ups or you're going to go home, right? So drop down, did his push-ups. Meanwhile, his 3 other, coworkers were, making fun of him, pointing fingers at him, and making him feel really, ostracized in front of the group. So what does the 18-year-old do when he goes home? Talks to his parents. I'm not going to work tomorrow. What do you mean you're not going to work tomorrow? No, I'm not going to work tomorrow. I know my boss doesn't like me. I'm the only Spanish guy. Maybe he's got something against me. But, I explained the whole situation to his mom. What does the mom do? Picks up the phone, calls up the business owner, who has no idea any of this is going on because of, the foreman was running the show, and said, what kind of a circus are you running at that company? My son feels like he's targeted because he's Spanish, right, protected class, and he's being ostracized, and you can expect a call from my lawyer. So to make a long story short, they settled out of court for about $65,000. All because of, this manager not knowing how to handle a situation, or a perceived employee who perceived the situation very, very differently. It might have been harassment, who knows, right? But the big thing is we want to make sure that we are always in a proactive position, right? Had that business owner had a policy, coupled with how to effectively communicate discipline to an employee, it probably could have been avoided. Or at least, if we could have proven that, it would have been avoided. Okay. Questions on that? Just know that you can't harass, as small as you are. All right. So we always recommend, provide additional trainings. I'm going to go back real quick again. This is great. Provide non-harassment trainings to all employees annually. Again, it's doing everything in your power to prevent. Additional trainings for managers and supervisors because of that vicarious liability. And then, everything else. Okay. Yep. Okay, FMLA, Family Medical Aid Act, it's only if you have 50 plus employees. I'm not going to cover you guys today. Any questions on it? Okay. Just want to be relevant for you. go through it. Healthcare reform, again, it's one of those things, no changes, Obamacare. The only thing, if you do offer health insurance to your employees, even if you're under 50 employees, you do have to follow the federal guidelines and provide 50% of an individual and also 33% of a family. Okay. Employee at will. Everyone knows what that means? Okay. So employee at will means that you as a business owner have the right to terminate an employee's employment without any reason for it. There's no contract, no one's married to each other. You have the right to terminate. So you do want to communicate that to your employees. However, some of the pitfalls with employee at will statement is that sometimes business owners use that as a crutch and they think that they can terminate employees without any repercussions. Okay? Employee at will statements does not mean that an employee is not allowed to retaliate. Right? They can still accuse you of wrongful termination if we don't ramp them up properly. But they say, well, geez, you know what? I don't know why I got fired. They didn't even give me the resources. I didn't know what my job was. There was no job description. There was no training. There was no ramp-up time. They had a probationary period, so I sucked the first day I started. I mean, this is what they say. So we do want to make sure that we do set correct expectations, with job descriptions and give them resources to do the job. So in the event that they're not working out, we can have the confidence to terminate employment. Someone in the room mentioned that they're going to be terminating employees. So were there some things that you were concerned about, or?
Yeah, some ethical issues. We follow the guidelines because of the type of business that we are, social workers.
Mm-hmm.
So some issues around that, and just concentrating, and still things are still not being complied with.
Okay. I always say, for performance reasons, employees should never be surprised about being terminated. They should know exactly what the end of their expiration is. So we can have a side conversation after today if you want to talk more about it, but it's all about setting expectations. Document. Follow your employee handbook to a T, and have them sign off on acknowledgments. So another thing that we see a lot with business owners is that business owners will sometimes make notes on employees' behavior or whatever, performance, and that will never hold up in a court of law because the employee never signed off on it. Okay, so just be aware of that.
I did question regards. Sometimes I'll do like the write-ups of the warnings, or if we have like a 4-tiered policy before we fire somebody. I usually do them in writing and then also via email, just so it's like timestamps. So
Sure.
I can understand.
Yep. Statement of understanding. Absolutely. Yep. That's perfectly fine.
Is that enough? So if I don't have them sign it, just I print out the actual fact I sent it via email and went to them, and with the timestamp on it, I put it in their file.
Well, again, more is better. What I always recommend is do a performance improvement plan. List out the action items that they need to work on. Give them the time you're going to review it. What you're going to do as a leader to help, support them, and then have bi-weekly check-ins. So you can say, all right, we spoke, based on our conversation we had 2 weeks later, I'd like to, reiterate, you need to focus on X, Y, and Z, and you can send that in an email. But as long as it's an initial review process that's going in place with an expiration date, so by that date, you can say, did you meet the expectations or did you fall short? Okay. Questions on that? Good question. For discipline, progressive discipline, that was the perfect example. You do want to make sure that, you put things in writing. Anti-discrimination, same thing with harassment, can't do it. We cannot discriminate. So we're going to continue on. We talked about disparate treatment, disparate impact. Even if someone feels like they're being managed out, illegal. So if you reduce people's hours, that's illegal. We really got to manage their performance so that you don't get yourself in hot water when it comes to discrimination. Some of the laws that were passed, I'm not going to bore you to tears with those, but a lot that we talked about. Timely investigations. So I always say, I would say people's natural tendencies are to avoid if they're not comfortable with situations. So here's an opportunity where you can provide resources to your people. If you even yourself, I mean, it's not easy having crucial conversations with employees, or you see something like, you know what, it won't happen again. If you live by the model firm but fair and early intervention, you're going to be better off. And just know there's resources out there. So if it's not a strong skill set you have, there's companies like Paychex or companies out there that can help you, develop that skill set. It's really important as a leader to make sure that you act early on. If you do not document something within 10 days of happening, it will hold no ground. Okay. And an interesting fact: if an employee were to leave the company, say, "Oh, geez, you know what? They found another job. Thank God." They have up to 180 days to retaliate against the company. Okay, so again, even if they left and you feel like it's gone, you still want to make sure that you document. Okay. Questions on that? Okay. Again, going through this too for the sake of time, I don't want to move on. Move on from that. Sorry. Okay. I think that's it. Okay. All right. Any questions on things that we talked about at all today? Yes.
Regarding classification, could you explain how you can hire contract workers as opposed to hourly or exempt?
Great question. So 1099s. Anyone else have 1099s in the room? Okay. So 1099s are independent contractors. So we can't manage them like employees. We can't have them sign employee handbooks. We can't have them sign job descriptions. So one thing to keep in mind: if you have a 1099 and a W-2 employee with very similar job functions, red flag with the IRS. Okay, so they err on the side of caution. Hire them as a W-2, put them through your payroll process, and pay the taxes on them. Okay, you will be audited and you can be fined for that. 1099s are really a thing of the past. And if you have 1099s on file, you will be audited by the IRS regardless, because they really want to dig into why you're on a 1099. That answer your question?
No, but I understand.
There's also a checklist to go through in order to have a W-2 versus 1099. And so if they meet certain classifications on there, they would be swayed to go as a 1099. For example, like a paint company. If there's a paint company that comes and they're doing a job for a company and they're painting at night and the job's going to last 2 weeks, 1099 some contractors because they have other work that they do. That could be classified because it's a one-time job. Now, if that painter is part of your business and he goes with you pretty much on a regular basis and he only works for you, it's a really gray area. So again, Paychex or other companies out there can help you with the classification of employees where they should ultimately be.
Yeah, the issue that I've experienced is more where the individuals want to be 1099s. And
Then they need to be their own business owner. 'Cause
The employees,
that's what
employees should never dictate how they get paid. Yeah. Answer your question, or?
I understand.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
I mean, I just want to add to that because when I do my coaching, in my field it's very common to have subcontractors. I have employees for my core functions and because of those red flags. But some of the big things that the IRS is picking up and flagging and auditing is how that job posting is being actually displayed out. You're not supposed to ever say you're hiring a contractor, you are contracting a contractor. They are never considered part-time or full-time. You need 3 hours worth of work done for the next 6 months because those other words are what make them more employee-ish.
Yep. Yep, good. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. I mean, 1099s, you really need to be careful with it. I mean, that's all I can say really with those. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys for coming. If you have any other questions, you'd like to email us or call us, we have our contact information in the back. And I appreciate you all coming in tonight. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.